Good morning, everyone. Hope everybody is doing well. And before we get started, let's go over the volume again. So, what is the volume? Volume is a measure of how much a space an object takes up. And what is our formula for finding the volume? The formula for finding the volume is the length times the width times the height equals the volume. So that is, once again, the formula for the volume. So today, we will be finding the volume of irregular objects. So what do I mean when I say irregular objects? Let's look at this object right here. This is an example of an irregular object. Take another look at it. You'll notice it compared to this box right here. This is a complete rectangular prism. This is not an entire rectangular prism. Or let's bring back the box of fruit snacks. This is an entire rectangular prism. This is not an entire rectangular prism. So today we are going to find the volume of this rectangular prism. Now keep in mind, since we worked with these before, these are all, make it a little closer. All of these blocks here are 1 inches, all on all sides of each individual block. So let's go ahead and get started. So when we're finding the volume of an irregular object that looks similar to this with all the straight edges, we cannot use the regular formula for volume, length, width, and the height. Because if you look at it, let's compare it to this. Matter of fact, let's stand it up. So we can find the length, we can measure the width, and we can measure the height very easy with this box. Since this is not a completely full object, we cannot measure this the same way we can measure this fruit snack box. So we are going to have to use a different strategy to find the volume of this irregular object. Matter of fact, I'm just stand it up. Everybody get another look at it. Okay. So when you look at this irregular object, what do you think we can do to find the volume of this irregular object? Let me give everybody a moment. If you look at this very closely, even though this is not an entire rectangular prism, you may notice something. You may notice, if you look closely, that there are 2 rectangular prisms within this object. So what we can do is this. Since we cannot measure the volume using the regular formula that we have that we use for finding a rectangular prism, we are going to take this, and since there are 2 rectangular prisms, we're going to break it apart. Now when you look at these 2 rectangular prisms, can I find the volume of both of these? Yes, I can. I can find the volume of both of these, of each of these objects by themselves. So let's go ahead and move these 2 over. And I'm going to put it on this mat right here. So we are going to find the volume for a rectangular prism number 1. And we're going to find the volume for the second one. After we do that, then we're going to move on from there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So once again, remember, let me turn on a little bit more light. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, let's start with the first rectangular prism. Take another look at it so everybody can get a good look. Okay. So we're going to measure the length, the width, and the height. Which side is the length? The length is always the longest side. The width is always the shortest side. So let's go ahead and look at the length. Ready, set, let's go. This is 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches. So the length of this object is 4 inches. Let's see what the width is. 1 inches, 2 inches. Now, what is the height? How tall is it? Let's see. 1 inches, 2 inches. So this is the size of our first rectangular prism. What we're going to do is 4, 2, and 2. So this is the length, width, and the height. We're going to multiply these. So this will give us the volume of our first object. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 what? Since we are measuring the volume, it's going to be 16 cubic inches. And we're saying cubic because we're measuring the volume. And since since each side of each cube is 1 inch, we're measuring it in cubic inches. So this first rectangular prism is 16 cubic inches. Now let's go over to this rectangular prism number 2. What is the length? Now, if you look here on the top, looks like they're about the same on on both sides, about the same size. So I would have to say it does not matter what side we measure as the length or the width. So we'll just go ahead. What is the length? 1 inches, 2 inches. So it's 2 inches long. What's the width? 1 inches, 2 inches. 2 inches for the width. Let's see what the height is. 1 inches, 2 inches. So this is the size of our second object. Let's go ahead and multiply the length, width, and the height. What is 2 times 2 times 2? 2 times 2 equals 4. 4 times 2 equals 8. 8 what? We're measuring the volume, so it's going to be 8 cubic inches. So this is the size of our second object. The volume of our second object is 8 cubic inches. So here we go. The volume of the first object of our first rectangular prism is 16 cubic inches. And for the second one, it is 8 cubic inches. You can also even find these by measuring the cubes. So let's go back to the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Turn it over. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that's 16 cubic inches. Let's go back to the second one. And we said it's 8 cubic inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 cubic inches. Okay. So, who can guess what our next step is going to be? Because remember, these two rectangular prisms were put together to make this object. So we're finding the volume of this entire object all together. Matter of fact, let's try that again. So these are our two objects. And we're putting them together to make one object. What do you notice I'm doing? I'm taking these two objects that are separate and I'm placing them back together. I'm placing them back together. I'm putting them together. Since I'm putting them together, I'm adding them together. So I'm taking these two and I'm putting them up together. I'm adding them together. So I am going to take both objects. I'm going to add the volume of this object and add it with the volume of this object. And that is going to give me the total volume of this object. So What is the volume of this object? 16 cubic inches. And what is the size of this object? 8 cubic inches. So we're going to add 16 cubic inches plus 8 cubic inches. Let's go ahead. What's 6 plus 8? 6 plus 8 is 14. Carry the 1 over. 1 plus 2 is 2. So 24 what? We're trying to find the volume of this entire object once we put it together. So it's 24 cubic inches. So let's put these together. So the volume of this entire irregular object is 24 cubic inches. That's how big it is. Matter of fact, if I wanted to double check to make sure that's correct, let me put it on the side and let's count all the squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Let's flip it over. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. I still have 24 cubic inches. So that is how we find the volume of an irregular object. We take a regular object looks similar to this. We're going to look for the rectangular prisms. We're going to split those rectangular prisms apart. Find the volume of both rectangular prisms and add them together, get the total volume of that irregular object. Okay, so let's put this to side for the moment, because we're going to do one that is a little bit more challenging. Give me 1 minute while I set up our... Matter of fact, we're going to put this aside in case you want to look at it later. So this represents the size of this. 24 cubic inches. There we go. Okay, ready? Make it 1 minute. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay, here is our new object. This is our new irregular object. Once again, it is not an entire solid object just like this. Sorry. So, this is an irregular object. Take a good look. And once again, we cannot measure the volume the entire way using this formula. So, if you've been listening to the first part of this video, how are we going to find the volume of this object? Well, when you look at this regular object, what do you notice? You should notice that within this irregular object, there are 2 rectangular prisms. There we go. So that's how we're going to find the volume of this irregular object. We're going to look for the 2 rectangular prisms that are within this object and split them up and turn them into separate rectangular prisms. So we're going to find the volume of this object and we're going to find the volume of this. So let's go ahead and place them here. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and find the volume of rectangular prism 1, then prism 2. Now, before I go ahead and find the volume, what are we going to do after we find the volume of these 2 prisms? What did we do before? If you said we're going to take these 2 rectangular prisms and we're going to take the volume of both rectangular prisms and add them together to find the total volume for this object, you are correct. So let's put them back together just like this. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with prism 1. So when you look at prism 1, what do you think when you look at the length the width, and the height, what do you think the volume of our first prism is going to be? Give everybody a moment. Okay. Now, before we go find the length, width, and the height, let me remind everybody that these squares right here, these all measure in centimeters. So from here to here is a centimeter. This is a centimeter. This is a centimeter. So in each individual square, they all measure a centimeter on size. So let's go ahead and get started the prism one. Let's turn it this way. Okay. So what is the length? Which side is the length? As we talked about before, the length is always the longest side. The width is always the shortest side. So let's measure the length of our first prism. Ready, set, go. 1 inches, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches, 7 inches. So, oh, did I say inches? I'm sorry. 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, 3 centimeter, 4 centimeters, 5 centimeters, 6 centimeters, 7 centimeters. All right. So it's 7 centimeters long. How wide is it? 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, 3 centimeter, 4 centimeters. Let's get down. What is the height? 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters. So it is 2 centimeters high. Now, what are we going to do with 7, 4, and 2? Easy. We're going to multiply them. 7 times 4 times 2. All right. Let's go ahead. 7 times 4 is 28. 28 times 2. What is 28 times 2? If you said 28 times 2 equals 56, you are, If you say it's 56, 50, you are correct. 56 what? It's not just 56. What are we measuring? We're measuring the volume. So since we're measuring the volume of this object, we're going to say 56 cubic centimeters. So the volume of our first rectangular prism is 56 cubic centimeters. So this is 56 cubic centimeters. Let's see what the volume is of our second prism. Length, width times the height. Okay. Yep, let's look again. Notice something. On the top of our object, of our prism, they're the same size on the top and the bottom. So in this case, it doesn't matter which side we measure as the length and the width because they're the same size on all. So let's find the length. Ready, set, go. 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, 3 centimeter, 4 centimeters. 4 centimeters long. What's the width? 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, 3 centimeter, 4 centimeters wide. And what is the height? 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters. So it's 4 centimeters long, 4 centimeters wide, 2 centimeters high. What are we going to do with 4, 4, and 2? Easy. We're going to multiply. 4 times 4 times 2. What is 4 times 4? 4 times 4 is 16. What is 16 times 2? 16 times 2, 32. Next time we'll put some tape here so it doesn't move. 32 what? We're measuring the volume, so it's going to be 32 cubic centimeters. So this object right here is 32 cubic centimeters. So now that we know the volume of our first rectangular prism and we know the volume of our second rectangular prism, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to do with 56 cubic centimeters and 32 cubic centimeters. Remember, we are putting these two together. We're putting them together. Since we're putting them together, what's another synonym? We're putting them together, or we're adding them back together. So since we're adding these two back together after we find the volume, we are going to add 56 cubic centimeters with 32 cubic centimeters. So let's write that down. 56 plus 32. 6 plus 2 equals 8. 5 plus 3 equals 8. 88. 88 what? 88 cubic centimeters. So, when I take these two and place them together, sorry, give me a minute. The size of this object is 88 cubic centimeters. That is the size. So once again, that is how you find the volume of an irregular object. We are going to find the two rectangular prisms that are located in objects, split them apart, find the volume of both objects, and then we're going to take the volume of both objects, add them together, and that is going to give us the answer, going to give us the volume. So once again, the volume of this object is 88 cubic centimeters, just like the volume of this irregular object is 24 cubic inches. Okay, so let's come over here and let's go over your classwork for today. Okay, give it a minute for our worksheet to come up. There we go. Okay, so there are two sides of this paper. There's a front and the back. So this is our classwork assignment. There's two assignments under the math assignment today. One classwork, one homework. But this is the classwork. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So we'll go up and down. This is the front. Sorry, my computer's running a little slow. Come on. There you go. So this is the front. And as we scroll down, sorry about that. This is the back. So this is the back page. This is the front page. So what you are going to do, you are going to look at these irregular objects. There's a regular object here. There's a regular object right here. There's an irregular object here. And then we have a bigger irregular object here. Now, when you look at this first irregular object, you'll notice something. You'll know that you'll see two prisms somewhere inside of this object. What are those two prisms? Once you take the prisms, once you find the prisms, we're going to break them up into two prisms. You can draw a sketch right here what those two prisms will look like. After you find the size of both of those prisms, write the volume for the first prism, the volume for the second prism, and then what we're going to do when we find the volume for both prisms, for both objects. You are going to add them together, correct? You're going to add them together, and then that will add the two prisms, the volume of the two prisms, and then that will give you the total volume of this object. Same here. When you look at this irregular object, what two prisms do you see? Separate those two prisms, draw what both prisms look like here, write the volume of the first prism and the second prism, add the two volumes together, and that will give you the total volume of this object. Let's look at the third one. Now, this one is a little different because it doesn't have the cubes. But you can still figure it out. So without any cues, what two prisms do you see? Matter of fact, Give you a little hint. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's all I'm gonna give. Okay, so you're going to probably split some of these sizes right here. So we have the 6. So from here to here is 6 inches or 6 centimeters. It doesn't give a particular size. But from here to here is only 2 centimeters. So from here to here, from top to bottom here is only 2 centimeters. But from here to this side is only 6 centimeters. So what do you think the size would be from here to here? You might even notice it on the paper. That gives you an idea of the size of what this what this prism is going to be. So draw them out here. After you draw them out, find the volume of both objects, right? On the volume of both of them here, and then you're going to add them together, and that will give you the volume of this whole object. And also, one more thing. Even though there are no cubes here, we can still find the volume. What is the formula for the volume? So if I separate this, if you find the length of that object, of that prism, the width and the height, and that will give you the volume. So even without the cubes, you can still find the volume by multiplying the length of each prism, the width of each prism, and the height of each prism. Same here. What is the length, width, and the height? Okay, that's all I'm gonna give you for that. I might have given up too much already, but oh well. Okay, now let's look at the last one. And this one's a little challenging. So there's more than 2 prisms. If you look very carefully at our last object, there are actually 3 rectangular prisms inside of it. Do you see what the 3 rectangular prisms are? If you see what the 3 rectangular prisms are, you are good. So you have a chance. Draw the first, the second, and the third rectangular prism. Find the volume for the first one, the second prism, and the third prism. You're going to add all 3 of them together, and that is going to give you the volume of this entire object. Now, to help you out, included under the assignment in Google Classroom, I am going to give each one of you, I gave each one of you this centimeter grid paper. And the reason I am giving this to you is in case you have difficulties, just scrolling up and down. So in case you are having any difficulties looking at the objects or drawing them out to figure out what the, if you having difficulty just looking at the objects and figuring out what the volume is for each one, then what you can do is you can just take one of these papers here, draw the object out on the grid paper if you can, and then so with this grid paper you can actually make make both prisms. Matter of fact, so let's go back to this one for example. So there's obviously 2 rectangular prisms, but you're looking at them, you're saying, oh, I'm having difficulty figuring out what it is just by looking at it. So what you can do, you can just draw it out. You can just draw out both rectangular prisms, put them on both papers, cut them out like you did on the very first assignment we did last week. And then you can use that to help you figure out the volume if you can. Let me go back and see if I can look back in here and find it. An example, what we did last week. So who remembers this? So remember I was saying from the last assignment, if you had difficulty figuring out what the volume is for this, you can just draw it out here. Well, you can do something very similar to here. So once again, if you have difficulties figuring out what the volume is, take both objects, draw each of them on here, cut them out, put them together, and then that will help you figure out what the volume is. Same thing going down. There we go. To the bottom. You notice there's 3 prisms. So what you're going to do, take 3 of these papers. Draw each prism on both paper, cut them out, make the prism, make the actual prisms. And then you may use that to help you out. So that's the reason I'm giving you this grid paper, just in case you have difficulty looking at the objects of each 3 prisms and finding the volume of each prisms just by looking at it. Okay. So anyway, that concludes our lesson. I hope everybody understood and comprehend what I was teaching. Once again, if you have any questions, just email me or send me a message on Gmail, Google Classroom, on Class Dojo. This assignment will be due on Friday. I'm trying to think. I think that's it. So guess I will talk to you all next week, and everybody enjoy their day. Stay safe.